Welcome everybody to the Police Service Board meeting on November 14th. Roll call, we are missing Member Graves and Deputy Chief Johnson. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Can I get a confirmation of the agenda?
That the board confirms the agenda for the meeting of November 14th, 2025 as amended with the following addition. Item 10.1, closed session, Chief of Police, Personnel Update 2026 Staffing Plan.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Member Andrews, Member French, all those in favor? And that's carried. And no delegations, no unfinished business. I'm seeing no new business.
Can I throw something on?
Yep, to you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just under new business, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the board for coming out last week for the police service report that both the deputy and I put on. And on behalf of both Chris and I, the support shown by everybody here and Member Graves as well, who's not here, went a long way for us. So we sincerely appreciate you taking the time. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Chief. Looking forward to doing it again next year as well attended. We'll move on to reports. So 8.1, can I get a resolution on that?
That the media releases provided by the Chief of Police be received for information.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Vice Chair Barber, Member Andrews, all those in favor? That's carried. We'll move on to 8.2 and I'll pass it off to you, Chief. Or 8.3, oh, sorry, 8.2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not unlike the media releases, this collision statistic up to Q3 has been provided for information purposes. Nothing completely standout. Obviously, the start of the year with the poor weather was where the bulk of our collisions occurred, and at the end of Q3, we're sitting at 56 collisions for the town. Of that, 7 were non-fatal injuries, requiring some minor medical attention, transport to hospital. 44 of those were simply police attendants, and 2 were non-reportable under the $5,000 threshold. As far as the collision locations, on page 23, it's kind of a bit of a smattering of the town all over the place, with the bulk condensed like usual at Talbot and John and Talbot and Queen. Collision time of day, as I reported in the last quarter, has remained largely unchanged, happening mostly on Fridays, with the time of day incidents around 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock, respectively. The interesting statistic, you'll note that most of the road conditions were clear at the time of the bulk of the accidents, so a large amount of that simply attributed to driver error or inattentiveness. Rest goes on. We've had a couple failed remains. That also includes parking lot failed remains where somebody's bumped into a vehicle that triggers the failed to report threshold. So 10 of those were within a parking lot, 1 non-intersection, and 4 were at or near a private drive. Collisions involving pedestrians to the end of Q3, we've had 3 total incidents, none of which resulted in any fatalities nor any significant injuries. We've had no collisions this year involving cyclists, and none that were directly related to alcohol or drugs. Top intersections, like I said, no surprise to us, the bulk at Talbot and Queen and Talbot and John. And that's the Q3 summary for the collision report, subject to any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions from the board? Can I get a resolution?
That the Q3 collision statistics for the Aylmer Police Service be received for information.
Mover and seconder. Member French, Member Andrews, all those in favor? That's carried. Now we'll move on to 8.3.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you'll note, and as I mentioned in our previous, we've kind of gone to more snapshotted dashboard for the benefit of quick reference for the board. One of the things you'll note, we're well above our revenue collection, so we're doing well with that respect, and a large amount of that's attributed to the Ontario Police College. Overall, you'll see with the chart, we're basically tracking not unlike 2024, very much in line with that. Going through the operating budget, you'll note salary and wages appear to be about 4% higher than where we would be targeting. However, Our part-time is well under, and that number includes the wages for those that are at OPC. So that will be reconciled on the back end with the money that comes back to us through the SolGen, through our seconded officer program. And we're still, I just submitted the billing for Q4. We'll have somewhere in the neighborhood of about $120,000 coming back for that quarter alone. So we will be in good shape with that respect. Aside from that, we're tracking very well with respect to all the other line items, nothing really out of whack and nothing that we have any concerns about. Drawn the board's attention to this previously, simply the maintenance that was unforeseen on some of the vehicles has driven those totals up a little bit, but we're still tracking well on the overall operating, will not be an issue. Collected very well in our grants to the tune of 97% for what we were anticipating for this year. We're waiting for one more payment, which will true that line up. And again, I spoke to the grants. It's in the grant line, but it's actually the reimbursement through the seconded officer program with the Ministry of Community Safety there. So 2 full-time instructors seconded there, which is Jeff DeLue and Steve Long, and then Sergeant Ray Castor is on a temporary secondment at the Dev Center in Cornwall for this quarter, which he will return December 18th. So overall, we're sitting at 81%, which effectively is 3% under where we would be tracking, and that's again without the monies coming in from the police college. So overall, I'm quite happy with it and no concerns, subject to any questions of the board.
All right, any questions or comments from the board? Vice Chair Barber.
Thank you. To the chief, one budget line seems to be elusive as far as nailing down cost, and that's unemployment insurance. I know we have no control over that, but all departments within the town and probably in business too are struggling with that. Is it because the rate is so elusive, or do we really have any idea of what's causing that?
So obviously, Ms. Sachs, anything I'm going to tell you is regurgitated from her expertise, but obviously it's completely not within our control. There is some, excuse me, there is some unknowns just based on the time that the government kind of lets you know what the rate is going to be. And when you're trying to plan your budget cycle at the onset, sometimes those don't true up. So that sometimes accounts for that. In this one here, yeah, it's a little bit higher, but we've also had more of our full-time employees working instead of our part-time employees this year. So that may also account for some of that. But short of having a conversation with her, that's my understanding of it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, can we get a resolution?
That the 2025 budget snapshot and October budget documents from the Chief of Police be received for information.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Member Andrews, Member French, all those in favor? And that's carried. Back to you, Chief, for 8.4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll turn your attentions to the proposed 2026 operating budget for both the police service and the police service board. As you'll recall previously, I proposed a couple different scenarios for the board at 8.48, 10, and 12.11 with different scenarios. So what I can tell you since that time is we have had a part-time officer resign, which has kind of changed the landscape with the part-time program and kind of freed up some money there where we would basically attribute that over to the criminal investigator position, which is the direction that both the deputy and I have been very clear we'd like to see go. So bringing on a new officer and getting the budget exactly where we feel we can't get it down any higher, particularly with the grant issue that I brought forward before. Our grants are not what they used to be, and this is a true budget. We have, since that time, submitted for 2 additional grants that we're, again, writing for that position for, that hopefully we can recoup some money. And not CSP grant, a couple new grants. So we're just going to try our hand with that. So anything that would come in after this proposed budget would effectively be a surplus, but we would basically be able to put it back on. So removing the part-time employee and trimming down every line to the best of our ability, the proposed budget for 2026 with board and operating for the service is 9.52. So that was actually lower than the initial 10 and change that the deputy and I proposed as the middle of the road, which would involve deferring the implementation of the additional officer until midway of 2026. This plan at 9.52 injects that person in January. So this, in my respectful submission, is the best case scenario for service delivery. It's the best case for, you know, our officer morale and not moving people around. I will tell you, the officer that is currently tied to the CIB position is sometimes on the road, he's sometimes working nights, days, we're moving him around, we're sending him to conferences, and we certainly appreciate how flexible he's been, but that will, you know, only go so far with somebody's, you know, planning mental health and well-being, which we're very cognizant of too. So, subject to any questions, there's no lines compared to 2025 that have been significantly changed. In fact, some have been reduced in certain areas. The main line, as the board is well aware, has to do with salary, benefits, and wages, which were tied into a current collective bargaining agreement, which was well in line with what was happening in the province for a police service this size, and albeit completely out of my control in drafting the budget for the board. And yeah, subject to any questions, it's very, very carbon copy from 2025, save and except the installation of that new member.
All right, thank you, Chief. Member Andrews.
Turn it this way. Good. Thank you for proposing this budget. I just thinking back to the meeting that we had last week. Was it last week? The week before. In comparison to other budgets in the communities, ours seems to be relatively low increase, especially with services our size. So that's one part of it, which I think it might be worthy for you to just touch on. But then also everything that has been accomplished, whether it's the renovations at the facility, anything. I just see a clear path that you're doing everything possible to keep the expenses down. And I think it's worth mentioning that you've done a really good job. And I mean, it's reflected. And any of the money that has not been spent in past budgets, it just further shows the responsibility that you've created for the community to have a solid budget that isn't out of line. So would you mind just maybe mentioning some of those other statistics for other communities?
Thank you, and I appreciate the remarks sincerely. So I mentioned St. Thomas, and I'm not putting these numbers out to be disparaging to the other services, because I certainly don't have, you know, an introspective purview of what they need and why, but St. Thomas is looking at 22.3%, which is almost $4 million, which again I mentioned was more than our operating budget. Cobourg Police, which is very similar in size to us, is just under 21% their chief is asking for. And that's, you know, again, due to the needs of their town, and we're coming in at a single digit. So one of the things, and it is included in this package within 8.4, is the cost comparison data, which the deputy and I provided at the town hall for policing meeting last week. So what I've done here, and this is a snapshot of cost comparators with police services that are like us in the fact that they are small to mid-sized municipal police services. Gananoque and Hanover being very similar in size and strength to us, and included the citizen, they call it the cop to pop ratio, but the officer to citizen ratio is included as well. So what you'll see here for us, I mean, in 2025, the Aylmer Police Service at 14 officers had one officer to every 617 members of the public. Whereas many other services were, you know, Gananoque at 392, Hanover at 468. So that just kind of shows kind of the spread and kind of the breadth of what our officers are doing and kind of the ratio with respect to that. The cost per capita, I had come up with an average based on the Aylmer Police, Gananoque, Hanover, Saugeen Shores, Smith Falls, St. Thomas, Strathroy, West Grey, and Woodstock. West Grey, very similar to us. Smith Falls, Saugeen, Hanover, Gananoque, very similar to us. St. Thomas Police and Woodstock Police, obviously a little bit bigger, but included mostly due to proximity. So when you take their cost per capita for 2025, you come up with an average of $499.98 per capita. And our per capita cost for 2025 came in at $350.49. So when you look at the data compared to the other ones, you've got $589, $492, $339. Saugeen was slightly below us. Smith Falls at $690, St. Thomas $353, Strath at $338, West Grey $353, and Woodstock at $492. So, I mean, it's a pulse check, if anything, and I think that it does truly show, you know, exactly what we're doing with what we have, and that we're not really running a Taj Mahal, and we certainly don't have bells and whistles. We have exactly what we need to do the job we need to do. So moving forward with that, if you use the same methodology for 2026 with the proposed 9.52 that I've brought before the board, that puts us at $377.65. That is with the installation of the criminal investigations officer position, which, as the board is well in tune with, is required under the CSPA and also just in our forward-facing service delivery. So with respect to the other services that have provided their budgets, and two have not yet. So Strathroy has not come up with their number to their board yet, and same with Woodstock. So using their numbers from 2025 plugged into 2026, when you look at the average of the same services, you're around $610.69 per capita. We're at $377.65. I don't really know how better this picture paints than the data, and it's exactly based on that. There's no, you know, there's no secrets here. It's pretty obvious that you look around town, there's building, there's construction, there's more people coming, and this staffing plan and this budget is not going to increase our operational staff. This is exactly what we need moving forward. So we have the capacity within, and our forecast for the next 5 to 10 years, I would indicate there's no additional FTEs that we would be requiring whatsoever, and we have large capacity to take on whatever comes our way, so.
Thank you for that, Chief. Vice Chair Barber.
Thank you. Good question, Sherry. To the chief, two-part questions. The OPP has, or communities served by the OPP have recently received, I think, an 11% topping up. Could you talk to us about the efforts on the association and others to kind of get some fairness into the system? And secondly, can you just give us a snapshot of renovations that are expected in 2026?
Sure. So in line with that question, it's actually it's not a subsidy or a top up. It's a cap. So the Solicitor General has capped OPP policed municipality budgets at 11%. And our budget is still respectfully under that 11%. What that means for a municipality, and I don't know anything about this, but let's just take Tillsonburg, for example. If Tillsonburg's detachment actually needs 23%, nobody knows what's going to happen and who's going to cover, or if anyone's going to cover that difference. So this is very preliminary information where the Solicitor General's office has said 11% is the cap. But how that's going to look operationally and how that's going to translate, I really don't know. The second part of your question, what we've got forecasted for this year would be our lobby expansion is our primary and ultimately our final position of the building moving forward. And I'm told we will have an answer on our victim support grant, which is largely hoping to fund that project by the end of this month. So hopefully for the next meeting, we'll have some good news to bring back. But that's all we've got on the forecast, and something that I've been very passionate about, and we're really hopeful for. So,
thank you for the explanation on the OPP costing.
Member French.
Thank you. Just to reiterate to everyone that's listening and to our residents of Aylmer, Can you give us the exact percentage that goes towards, of the budget, that goes towards salaries and benefits, please?
Yeah, so and I've just got the data from the last one I cut, but it was about 92%. So that really doesn't leave a whole lot of wiggle room for operating, and that's just salaries and getting people in the building. Everything else is the lights, the fuel, the cars, the radars, the things that we need. So yeah, it's in excess of 90.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for the questions. Any other questions or comments on operating budget? No. So move on to capital.
So, Mr. Chair, just for the benefit here, the capital plan was actually approved by the board in September. So it's basically, I think it's simply just been included as an appendix of kind of next year, but that was carried in September.
So any other comments or questions on that? No. Seeing none, can we get a resolution?
That the board approves the police operating and capital budgets for 2026.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Vice Chair Barber, Member Andrews, all those in favor? All right, and that's carried. On to 9.1, correspondence. I see we get the pleasure of working with Member French for at least another year, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you. And now we move into closed session. Can we get a resolution?
That the police service board shall move into a meeting close to the public at 9:22 a.m. to consider Chief of Police report regarding personnel update and 2026 staffing plan, and that consideration of this item being closed to the public pursuant to Section 44(2)(b) and D of the Community Safety and Policing Act 2019 as amended, as the subject matter pertains to B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including members of the police service or any other employees of the board, and D, labor relations or employee negotiations.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Member French, Member Andrews, all those in favor? We'll move into closed. Okay. Can we get a resolution for coming out closed?
That the board rise from the meeting closed to the public at 9:28 a.m. and reports the following. That the board receive the report of the chief of police regarding personnel update and 2026 staffing plan, and that the board provide a confidential direction to the chief of police.
Can I get a mover and seconder? Member French, Member Andrews, all those in favor? All right, and that's carried. And on to adjournment.
That the board now adjourn at 9:28 a.m.
Mover and seconder? Member French, Member Andrews, all those in favor? And we are adjourned.